Imagine being so rooted in neglect that your mind doesn't feel worthy of focusing on yourself, that it would rather take the memories of relationality and proximity and pedestalize and inflate them due to the safety and temporary pacification of which it brought your body. From a core wound of abandonment that leads one to believe that their time and attention is not worthy of being poured into self. From a society that dwells so externally from its deprived core that it doesn't realize it's sourcing its entire experience from the midst of its projection. No wonder it gets thrown through the samsara wheel of endless lessons. To springboard off of your neglect or abandonment is the fall, is pride. I know that might sound so insensitive to the child who was never taught otherwise. At a certain point, it stops becoming the environment that is taxing our energy. It stops becoming the outer circumstances that are stopping us from the ascension and the release that we seek. It becomes us. How does that work? I imagined a little kid the other day saying, "I don't want to." When I was working at a daycare, this little boy Malachi wouldn't stop. "I don't want to. I don't want to." I get it. You're justified, bro. Why would you want to put your body in this sedentary, stagnant position all day inside, not even being able to see the sun? Why would you want to be domesticated into a society that keeps you numb? No one would. So it's very justified that our inner child is all sitting here throwing a fit, saying, "I don't want to." But unfortunately, that same attitude has been applied to the very things that we know will propel us to greater heights. That same attitude has been applied to the very things that we know will propel us to greater heights. Fight or flight mode. Continuously reverberating and regurgitating the programs of the subconscious mold. The locked consciousness default programs of which we were born into. The genealogical doppelganger that you call you. The involuntary aspects of existence that we, for some reason, can't help but identify with, even though we know they are our downfall. But who is we? And what is identity? But fleeting. Separation. Segmented narrative. And separation causes this feeling of isolation no matter where you are. You could be in the midst of the greatest social mammal function that you've ever laid eyes upon and still feel like you're fundamentally alone. No matter how much you try to hone in that gaze on a parade and celebrating the fleeting nature of shared desires, the hollowness will always catch up to you. And if you spend your entire life utilizing the inertia and resistance to change to remain in the mold of what you perceive as yourself, well, that deathbed will definitely feel more like hell than anything else. And so will the entirety of the human experience, because what is hell but separation? From God, I'm not even going to bring in that title. I'm not even going to bring in some facade. The language is not what matters. It's the resonance that's being transmitted. This transmission is non-linear. I don't have to formulate an A, B, C, D to be able to get you and me to see that we are floating free in eternity. And when we give ourselves the attention that we lacked, we tend to attract the very things that we once wanted to cling on to. The tendency to cling is nothing new, and it's nothing bad either. It's honesty. Everybody is looking for safety. No matter the depth of the distortion, it's simply an infant looking for the tit. Even in the midst of war, death, murder, rape, sedated consciousness that believes it needs to predate in order to feel that sense of safety. And lately I've been noticing the aspects of my mind that are no better than who we demonize in society, making me realize the infant is not to be demonized. The infant, the tendency to reach externally for the source, is not to be seen as something bad. Neither any of its distorted mechanisms of regulation of which it reached either. Because how would you treat the rebellious child? If your child were to rebel, how would you treat that? Well, you have to ask yourself what makes a child rebel in the first place. Because nobody does anything out of the ordinary unless they don't feel safe. And when I say ordinary, I don't mean confines or slavery or limitations in things. I simply mean the flow of love and compassion. The only way that something born into this organic experiment could be thwarted away from such grace is if the very opposite was put in their face, or rather the absence of such. Hence neglect, abandonment, from the beginning of the video, leaving people to utilize their stream of consciousness flow to simply focus on what they have not, or what they had, simply in lack, simply attempting to manufacture a life of abundance through the very resistance in our core. And when we invite that non-resistance into life, and we begin to speak to our body in the ways that we weren't taught, I mean, if you notice right now, you're likely a top-heavy existence. Your blood probably is mainly being felt in your head and your shoulders. It takes a long time for my blood to melt into my hips fully. It's like they've been abandoned. It's like dusty cobweb library parts of the body due to that very neglect and compensation pattern of external seeking. Because the more we look outside of ourselves for anything, the less we feel our spatial awareness, the less we feel our body from within, our blood flowing, permeating breath through the body. Breath gets shortened in vigilance when we perceive reality with need. Need begets threat. Need equates to threat, because how could you need something unless there was a potential detriment? Reality might be fragile, but that doesn't mean it's dangerous. How are you willing to be slow enough and still enough to see? You won't have to dodge the bullets, Neo. And what do I mean by that, bro? Simple enough to say that time and perception is only begotten by you, by your speed, by your breath, by your willingness to decompress. And in your willingness to decompress, you will see the residual effects of reality slowing down to a much more comprehensive pace. Something in which you can see the patterns be drawn and erased over and over again, and you can see the grace behind such play, such spontaneity, such temporary form, wherein which we don't have to cling on to societal norms and the fear of death and stress, causing stress and fear of death. And the cycle repeats, I must confess. Permeating blood and breath and life through these dormant areas is what helps the world on a macro scale. Period. If you want to make change to anything, it starts with you. And hilariously, this bully archetype that we see in society is all self-preserving. Self-preservation equates to bullying because that's the mammalian fear architecture. Literally, mammals, whenever they perceive a loss in their environment, they guard, they shield, they overprotect that exact same space that they were once stolen from, often way more protection than it is indicating there is a threat externally. And that is us. We guard and hoard the memories that made us feel stolen from, that made us feel hurt. And that very inertia begets our entire life, our entire adult narrative, and the things we seek, the things we believe are going to bring us satisfactory results. But they won't, when their very foundation is your frustration. So allow that frustration that you perceive to be surrendered into primordial rage and grief that you feel when you come out of the womb to begin with. That rage, that ire, is the soul of existence. And in such suppression of a species, of course you get a wailing infant calling itself an adult. So the willingness to genuinely hold yourself in intimacy, the intimacy that you weren't given. Yeah, I know there's kids dying all across the world. It seems so unfair to sit with yourself in that intimacy. But look at your animal body. You don't think about that when you're thinking about having sex with somebody else. You don't think about that when you're thinking about falling asleep in them. You don't think about the suffering of the world when you're looking for your own medium of regulation, which is likely what begets the suffering to begin with. So when you reverse the attention and regulate from within, you no longer contribute to that cycle of external suffering. You are no longer a catalyst for people's damnation, rather their salvation. And I know that might seem dualistic, but hone in. It is truly just the infant evolving into the child. It is truly just evolution beyond the animal wild into a wild, spontaneous play. Hooray, celebration of today and forever. For river, let the brook water stream flow. Let it go. Like and hope. This location is in Austin. If you resonate with this video, leave a comment. I'm probably gonna start putting my phone number in these videos, just in case anybody wants to reach out in general. Fuck it. There you go. Text me with any inquiry. Because I know if you made it this far into the video, you got something to say if you hit me up. I ain't worried about that. I'm opening up to the spontaneous trust and flow of life. And only through self-directed attention inside will that ever be possible.
That's scratching his wiener, nigga.
He wants you to reach out and people's balls.
Let me drag him across the corner bed.
I ain't never seen such a nutsack on a squirrel. Damn.